Good morning. For those of you who have not heard about Palestinian public opinion, it's a very complicated public opinion. It is driven by so many things, but I'll postpone this discussion to later when hopefully I'll have more time to discuss the drivers of public opinion. For now, I'd like to describe to you where the public is. In answer to the question, is there an opportunity today? You can, let me say something about the poll though. Okay. All right. This is a recent survey. It was conducted last month and among a representative sample of the Palestinians. This is a typical Palestinian survey. We do these surveys on a quarterly basis. We try to measure public attitude regarding the major issues of the day. We've been doing this for the past 22 years. We have a lot of ideas about what the Palestinians think and why they think the way they do. But what you will see now is just a snapshot of where things are today at this moment. It will change tomorrow, and it's certainly different from yesterday. And if I were to say one word about it, I would say it's better than what we had during the last 3-4 years. So the trend, there is no trend yet. So, however, this survey sort of represents a slightly more optimistic situation than you would otherwise have if I were to make this presentation 2, 3, or even 4 years ago. Before that, things were actually much better than what we have today. So what are the main findings? I'll start with the good news. That's not the good news. Okay, here's the good news. We have a majority that supports the current negotiations and supports the two-state solution. 6 months ago, we did not have a majority in favor of the current negotiations. A little less than 60% believe that if Abbas is to make a deal, they don't know what the contents of the deal are, but they think if he is to make the deal, the public, a majority in the public will support it. That's a vote of confidence in Abbas. He is certainly in a better situation than he has been, at least for the last 3 years. So negotiations which the public opposed initially are actually helping him gain some credibility. And in fact, compared to only 3 months ago, the percentage of those who are willing to defer to him is in fact growing. And finally, if you look, if you're, I'm sure many of you are aware of the Clinton parameters and the kind of ideas and compromises that were developed in the Geneva Initiative. These compromises, we asked the Palestinians about them regularly. We've been doing so since 2003. So for the past 11 years, we've been measuring public perception regarding these compromises, and our current survey found that a majority of Palestinians, well, about 50%, will support a package that contains these compromises if Abbas is to present that package and ask Palestinians to vote in favor in a referendum. If this was just a survey about attitudes, we do not have a majority in favor of those compromises. This is a majority that is willing to defer to Abbas and accept his view that this is a deal worth supporting. Okay, so I've given you 3 pieces of good news. Here are 3 pieces of bad news. Most Palestinians do not trust the process. They do not trust diplomacy. This is not something new. It has always been there. And 70% is not the greatest percentage that we have ever come across. There were times when the percentage was even 90 or so. 70%, however, is an overwhelming majority of the Palestinians. Worse yet, the two-state solution itself is no longer believed to be a practical solution. This means many Palestinians are thinking of alternative solutions, including a one-state solution, and no solution, an explosion of some sort. Thirdly, when we ask, and this is a question that we did ask and have been asking almost for 20 years, when we ask whether people believe that a Palestinian state will emerge in the next 5 years, more than two-thirds in this survey said they don't believe that to be the case. Two-thirds is very high. A year ago, this would probably have been 70% or even more than that. So the fact that negotiations are underway, that the Secretary of State is so determined to push things forward, has convinced some Palestinians, not too many, to give him a chance. Okay, what will Palestinians support? Well, let's first start with what they will oppose if the current negotiations fail. A majority of Palestinians is opposed to a return to violence. This, by the way, has been the case since 2005. Since the election of Abbas, a majority of Palestinians have consistently rejected return to a second intifada or something like a second intifada. Palestinians are opposed to resumption of violence. Not all Palestinians, I'll show you in a minute that some Palestinians in some parts of the Palestinian territories, in fact, do support that. But overall, Palestinians oppose it. Palestinians are also opposed to an interim deal, one that would set the provisional borders of the state, but postpone issues of Jerusalem and refugees. In fact, a majority of Palestinians is also opposed to a permanent agreement that takes a long time to be implemented. For example, when we ask about a 10-year transitional phase during which the Israeli army would remain deployed in the West Bank, in the Jordan Valley, not the West Bank, in the Jordan Valley, a majority, an overwhelming majority, said no to that deal. I said not all Palestinians oppose a third intifada. You'll see in this slide that Palestinians who live in the Gaza Strip, in fact, do support violence for understandable reasons. Gazans are not going to be the ones who will initiate the violence. So it's okay for Gazans to think that West Bankers should initiate violence. But as you can see in the West Bank, there is a much stronger majority, a solid majority of 62% who are opposed to a resumption of violence. Similarly, with regard to the question about the interim agreement, I'm focusing on these two issues, the intifada and the interim agreement, because you're the first to see these results. These are two questions that Gilad asked me to add to our regular survey. And I'll say a little bit more about what other Palestinians think about these issues. But these two questions are consistent with other findings that we normally ask about. Not exactly in those terms, but similar ones. I'm trying to go the other way. Okay, so this is the interim issue. Gazans are also more willing, there is no majority in Gaza for an interim deal, but Gazans are more willing to agree to a deal that sets provisional borders. And once again, for understandable reasons, provisional borders will be in the West Bank and not Gaza. So as you can see, Gazans, in fact, do think like Gazans. In this case, this is, however, not the case on all other issues. And it certainly does not apply to the contents of any agreement. This is more about the process, but not about the contents. What will Palestinians support if the process collapses, if the current process collapses? Okay, I should do this. Two things Palestinians support. They want popular nonviolent resistance, and they want the Palestinian Authority to go to the UN. They want the PA to go to the UN and to ICC and other international organizations to wage a diplomatic warfare against Israel, even if doing so would mean bringing the Palestinian Authority to collapse. Okay, so the findings in general show that there is, in fact, an opportunity, but it is a fleeting moment. It is not a solid majority. Okay, we're done with this. Okay, thank you. Okay, I promised to say something about the drivers. So, in some of the most important issues, Palestinian society is polarized, and it certainly is not West Bank Gaza polarization. The polarization is essentially driven by other factors. In some cases, this polarization is centered on domestic issues. When it comes to the peace process and relations with Israel, in fact, Palestinians are not polarized because of who they are. Why do I say so? Because the most important driver with regard to the peace process is the value system of the Palestinians. Issues of religion, religiosity, that is, the role of religion or Islam in the state, views about social values. Together, these factors produce what we call the value system. If the question is, should Palestinians make peace with Israel based on a two-state solution? Palestinians will understand the two states in this case to mean a state within 67 lines with East Jerusalem as capital and so on. If that is the issue, if the peace process is judged based on the value system of Palestinians, who they are, their religion, their identity, etc., then they are divided, in fact, 3-1. 75% to 25% of the Palestinians will say yes to that kind of arrangement, a peace deal along the lines of a two-state solution, understanding that the two-state solution will meet Palestinian vital needs in that arrangement. Where do we then lose Palestinians if it is 75 to 25%? We lose them when we go to the second driver. The second driver is about threat perception. And this is essentially mostly driven by things Israel does. We regularly ask in the surveys about, are you worried or not worried? Your land being confiscated, so this is about settlements. Your home being demolished. Your movement is restricted. You'll be hurt by settlers or army. So that gives us some understanding of the threat perception. There are two issues about threat perception that we also examine, one of which is about Israel's long-term goals. We ask Palestinians, so what do you think Israel wants in the long run? What is Israel's long-term aspirations? And we get an extremely bleak picture, just as we do when we ask people, are you or are you not worried? Here we get somewhere between 70 to 80% of the public. So compare this to the first one. In the first one, you have 75 to 25, and the second one is the exact opposite. The picture, therefore, we lose significant part of the public once the threat perception issue is today's threat perception is brought in. The good news in this is if you reduce threat perception, you can significantly alter the way Palestinians think about issues. There is, however, a third factor, and it has nothing to do with Israel. Well, it has something to do with Israel, but not a lot. And this is about state building. This is where we compile data from various indicators about the quality of the leaders. Do people trust them? This is about service delivery. It's about rule of law. It's about clean government, corruption, and whatnot. So these are the three main drivers. And this third driver is extremely important because it essentially tells us whether people have confidence in a leadership negotiating a deal. I started by saying that there is an opportunity, but it is a fragile one because the society remains essentially polarized on some of the important issues, not all of them, but some of the important issues. And this polarization, however, is not because Palestinians are Palestinians. It's not because Palestinians have certain attitudes or value system that cannot be changed. The part that cannot be changed, in fact, is too small to have a significant impact on this issue if the other two factors are neutralized or moderated. Reduce threat perception, improve state building, and you get an overwhelming public support for a deal along the lines of what we've been asking about, a two-state solution similar to the Clinton parameters and the Geneva Initiative. I still have almost 3 minutes, so I'll be happy to answer a question or two. Oh, yeah? I'm sorry. So Gilad corrected me. I'm already behind schedule. So thank you very much.